I'm Tom Christensen. I'm the director of the China and the World program here at Columbia University, at the School of International Public Affairs. And this is part of our speaker series. We're really thrilled to have our speakers here today. I have a personal reason to really want them to present this book, and that is that they wrote this terrific book. They edited a terrific book on Chinese encounters with America, particularly in the early reform period. Influential Chinese who came to the United States were influenced by the United States, took that influence back to China, influenced China. The reason I say that is I am the editor of the Nancy Tucker Warren Cohen series on America and Asia at the Columbia University Press, and we very proudly published this book. So, and I have Terry's signature here. I'm going to ask you for yours as well before you leave. Don't forget. Our speakers today are Deborah Davis. She's professor emerita of sociology at Yale University, and she's also has a connection with something that's dear to me, which is she's a visiting faculty member at Schwarzman College at Tsinghua University, an institution that I helped create. I was on the academic advisory board for 3 years, and it's the 10th anniversary this year of Schwarzman College, which doesn't seem possible. But it's 10 years. I got an email last week from Steve Schwarzman reminding me to sign up for his 10-year party in Tsinghua, and I will go in April, even though I have no time. It's a great institution. And we also have Terry Lautz, who I've known for quite a while because we served on the board of the National Committee of U.S.-China Relations for a long time together. He was the former vice president of the Henry Luce Foundation, which funds a lot of research on China and Asia. And he's also the author of is it a companion book? You tell me, Terry.
Yeah.
It's a companion book. It's sequel. Yeah, so this is Americans in China. You can see Americans in China with Joe and Lai. It's kind of looking at it from the reverse angle. Unfortunately, Terry did not approach my book series with that book because it's a very good book. And we're just thrilled to have them here. I read this manuscript a very long time ago as the editor, and I'm looking forward to being refreshed. But it covers a lot of different people. So it covers people in the arts, it covers people in sports, it covers people in U.S.-China relations. And of course, the chapters I remember are all about the people who do U.S.-China relations, like my friend Wang Jise, who was a fellow in this program for 2 years while we were at Princeton. I don't know if Stephanie, you remember when Wang Jise was in town for 2 years, for like 3 months at a time. And venerable early U.S.-China policy experts like Xie Shide, Zi Zhongyun. So those are the kind of heroes in my world. But there are other heroes in here, and I'm going to stop talking about the book because the authors are right here, and I'm going to turn it over to them. Welcome to our speaker series. Thank you for coming to Columbia and going through the QR code process. And we appreciate you climbing over that wall to come and speak to us. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
We get back.
Do we have to turn the mic on, or is it?
Mic is on.
It's on. Okie doke.
We're online as well.
We are online.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. As Tom said, the book is an edited volume of commissioned essays of people who are, some of whom are very well known in China, not known outside. And we're going to quickly give you an overview and then hopefully use this opportunity to get feedback from you. As we said in the intro, I think it came on your announcement. I know I did it for Yale. The book is online. Your library has it. So if it's very easy for you to go online, read it, browse it, and get back to us. We've got other talks we're doing. We're going to take it on the road and also have the subjects rather than the authors speak. So we're collecting reactions. It doesn't mean we'll attribute them to anybody unless they want them attributed, but that's really important. So I'm going to take notes when the Q&A comes, and I keep track of these things. Let me quickly talk about Terry's book, which was the inspiration for this. It was a first post-COVID experience, so not too many of us in the room and the rest of the people online. And I was just blown away It is one of the best books I've read in the last 10 years. I can't say enough good things about it. It also turned out that I knew everybody except Senator Judd in the book. And so I began to think, after Terry closed that evening, would there be a possibility for the mirror image, which is now being called a sequel? So in other Americans in China, Chinese encounters with America. And we set out. Terry said he hadn't thought of it. Then he kindly said, and 24 hours later said, well, maybe we could do something together. I said, sure. And we started it. And 3 years after we had the idea, the book was in our hands. So we had a high level of cooperation, not only from Columbia Press, the review process, but from our contributors. So there are 12 essays. I wrote the first one with Dick Madsen, the substantive ones. Terry did introduction, the ending, pulled it together. And then we also had, which was my first experience after these many years in academia, of a content editor. I used my Yale grant so that we could have a content editor, something I'd never done before. Her name is Mary Child. She is a genius. We could not have done the book without her. And she is doing actually an edited volume for Fudan right now with on the Ford Law program. So she's taking on new projects, and I mentioned it, should any of you be looking for an extraordinary content editor. This is not copy editor. This is someone with whom you together work out the argument, not factuals, but the style. She was superb. So the next slide, can I forward the slides, or I just ask you to do it, Daniel?
Oh, no, I wasn't sure if you guys were gonna.
Oh, no, you want me to stand up there?
Either way was fine.
Oh, okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Okay, so forward next. Yeah, this is the cover of the new book. And what we're going to do this afternoon is we used different ways to identify people we wanted to write about, famous in China, not necessarily known outside of China, but examples of how the deep engagement over a person's life had a huge impact. And we wanted to also highlight, as Terry does in the first book, or any of us would do, that the context in which one began one's educational journey, the conditions under which, if you came to the U.S., both the United States, and then the conditions in China that shaped what you did with that life course that you had done before, one piece of which was in the United States. So the people come from the first chapter. Well, Terry's going to talk about that group, but the chapter I wrote with Dick Madsen, she was born in 1921, whereas the last person in the book is born in 1992. So you have a huge sweep. And that's the idea behind the book, that looking at these amazing people who come from actually 10 different occupations, I think. And in each case, we matched the subject with an author so that musicians are writing about the musician, the athlete is writing about the athlete, the biotech person is writing about the biotech person, and Dick worked with Xie in creating the Fudan Center. So each one of the authors is deeply connected to the subject, in most cases knew the subject personally. So that's, and I would say as a model, one ambition we had was New Yorker profiles. I don't think we quite met that bar, but they are easy to read, and most people find them very engaging. And most people from China are particularly enthusiastic. The cover, I'll just say, we found this in the archive at the National Committee. I went in one day and went through folders and folders. This was one of the very first pictures that we saw, and it's the ping pong group in 1972 coming to Detroit. When I showed the book to Li Cheng in Hong Kong in May, he could identify about 5 of the people.
Wow.
Yeah, he can tell you this person now does this person does that. We were surprised.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's the background.
Well, thank you so much. And Tom, thank you for accepting this into the Tucker Cohen series.
Yeah, I'm not a dictator, but I was for it.
But
You had my vote.
Our general editor, Stephen Wesley,
Yeah.
who was absolutely wonderful,
He's great.
who's actually based in St. Louis, even though he's editor at Columbia Press, University Press. He said, well, Tom Christensen and his committee are very selective. They don't accept everything. And I looked, in fact, there is a list of the books in the front. It's a short list, so we are honored. We appreciate it. And I also want to express my appreciation to Debbie for suggesting this idea and then working together. All of the people that we approached, who, as Debbie said, were specialists in their own fields, because if we had tried to write this ourselves, it would have taken 4 or 5 times as long if we could have done it. So we were very fortunate. But every single one of the authors that we approached said yes. They agreed. Nobody said, well, I'm sorry, I'm too busy. Yeah. And I think that suggests something about the importance of trying to see this relationship from a Chinese perspective, trying to put Americans in Chinese shoes. And that's not easy, but I hope that our authors and Debbie and I have accomplished that. We did this book because, as I said, we wanted this Chinese perspective, and we wanted to put it in historical perspective. But we also wanted to enlarge the conversation about engagement. I expect you all know that engagement has been under a lot of criticism, a lot of fire in terms of American political rhetoric, and I think on the Chinese side to some extent as well. And so we wanted to broaden the conversation, say, look, engagement isn't just about geopolitics. It's not just about political strategy. That's how it started after Nixon met with Mao and Zhou Enlai. But then it expanded into all these other fields that are represented in this volume. So that was another point of the book. And then the third thing, which I think is obvious but bears mention, is our ambition to humanize the relationship and to get beyond the headlines of tariffs and trade and Taiwan and South China Sea. Look, there's so much more to this relationship. So let me just give a quick overview.
It's a little sticky, but it's the forward arrow. Down one. Try that.
That one?
Next one.
Nope.
Can you help me out? Yeah.
There we go. All right.
Have to use it. Which arrow should you use?
That one. Good. Seems to work. All right. So the book is 3 parts, and first part has 3 chapters. And the first group, and it's more or less chronological, but the first group are those Chinese who had formative experiences with American culture or American society before the Communist Revolution or a Communist victory in 1949. And really, in one way or another, really understood the United States or U.S.-China relations. Yeah. So Ji Chaoju was an interpreter and a diplomat. And Chuck Hayford wrote this chapter. Ji was the interpreter to Mao and Zhou Enlai and Deng Xiaoping. He interpreted for Zhou and Mao when Kissinger and Nixon came to China in 1972, and he played an absolutely critical role in getting the Shanghai Communique together. And that was where the United States and China agreed to disagree on the issue of Taiwan. But Xi had a remarkable background because he was sent to the US with his family as a 9-year-old boy to New York City. He ends up going to Harvard. At the beginning of his junior year at Harvard, he says, I'm going back to China. And I'm going back to New China to help rebuild my country. And so he leaves Harvard, never gets his degree in 1950. And he ends up, he has a difficult time because he is so Americanized. His Chinese is extremely poor. He can't really speak the language. So it takes him some years to establish himself in the foreign ministry and to be accepted and finally gain party membership. But he ends up having an absolutely remarkable and critical career. He accompanies Deng Xiaoping on his trip to United States in 1979. And some of you may remember a picture of Deng and Xi wearing cowboy hats at a rodeo in, I think, Houston or Dallas.
Somewhere in Texas, yeah.
Somewhere in Texas. And Deng is about 6 feet tall. Xi is about 6 feet tall. Deng is about 5 feet, if that.
And he's a 10-gallon hat. He's a 1 gallon bottle and a 10-gallon hat.
Exactly. So Xi is bending over. So he ends up subsequently being a Chinese ambassador to Fiji and then to Great Britain, and in final chapters in the United Nations. Second chapter, and I will speed up now.
That's okay. Yeah, no rush.
Oh, yes, I forgot. Okay. Xie, as Debbie said, she and Dick Madsen wrote this. And Xie had experiences with Christian missionary schools in China before she went to the United States in the late 1940s. She did an MA at Smith College and then was one of very, very few women to study physics for a PhD at MIT. And the United States government did not want Chinese scientists to go back to China. This is early 1950s. So she managed to convince the authorities that she should be allowed to go to England to get married, and that she never came back to the States. She kept going to China. Debbie knows the story a lot better than I, but she also faced the same question that Xi did, and that is, was she a patriot? Was she really loyal to China, having been exposed to the United States, American culture, or was she a traitor? Yeah, and so again, it took her time to get herself established. She was persecuted, as so many intellectuals were, during the campaigns and especially during the Cultural Revolution. But if you had any association with the United States, if you had relatives or letters or any kind of connections, you were in big trouble. And so she has suffered from that. She finally was rehabilitated in the late 70s, early 80s. And lo and behold, she becomes the first female president of Fudan University, one of China's major research universities. Not only that, but she continues to feel very strongly, very passionately about the United States and realizes it's important. So with funding from the United States Congress, believe it or not, she establishes the Center for American Studies at Fudan, which is still going on. And so this is something that you can't imagine happening today.
Yeah. Her bust is still there. They have a bust there.
Right in front.
She's really adored. I mean, she's really adored by, people who consider her to be their professional grandmother. Like,
yes.
She created this place. I'm lucky to work here, and it's all because of Madame Xie. They call her Madame Xie.
Exactly. Yeah. So we can talk more during the Q&A, but we should move on if we can.
If it works as the arrow on the bottom.
The arrows.
Yeah, right. More reliable.
All right. In any case, next is Zi Zhongyuan. Zi Zhongyuan was one of China's early Americans. She was an America watcher. And Debbie and I included two America watchers, including Wang Jise.
Yeah.
Because this was critical for Chinese policy makers to really have an in-depth understanding of what was going on in the US. Zi had been exposed to some American culture, to English and American literature at Yale University, one of the Christian colleges, and also at Tsinghua. And she was also exposed to classical Western music and was a virtuoso pianist. These things did not serve her well later in the Maoist period. And even before that, after she graduated from Tsinghua, she became an ardent believer in the idea that the United States was China's arch enemy, which it was during the Korean War. You know, Chinese and Americans were killing each other. And so then it was only later in her career that she becomes a tour guide and is able to meet with some very high level, very influential Americans, begins to have a more well-rounded view of Americans, but then joins CAS, the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, which was established in 1977, I think it was. And she becomes the director of the Institute of American Studies. So she becomes an American. She comes to Princeton University as a visiting scholar. She has a fellowship at the Woodrow Wilson Center. She digs into the archives on U.S.-China relations, and she learns that the conventional Marxist history is a lot more complex. So she brings a nuanced, much more nuanced understanding of U.S.-China relations and I think it's quite fair to describe her as a Chinese de Tocqueville, you know, the French philosopher and writer who came to the United States and then wrote early on, what was it, 18th century?
1820.
1820. 19th century?
1840s. It's 19 early.
Yeah, wrote so perceptively about American society. So Zi Zhongyuan does the same thing.
Okay, pass it over. So as Terry said, we ended up grouping these folks into three generations. As I explained to the sociologists who aren't in this room, they aren't exactly cohorts, birth cohorts, but we're focusing on moments in Chinese history when they have a shared moment. And so these three actually are quite close in age. They were all born within 10-year span. They all went to university before 1949, although they don't graduate until afterwards. And they are all party members and official leaders in their field. These are not people on the margins. These are people at the center who become part of the center and remain at the center through their death. So Xie Shide, for example, is on the three central committees. The others didn't have that position, but they're very high up and well connected and living in Beijing. The next group, which is larger, is a group who come in the 1980s. So come a little bit later than that first group, and their lives extend beyond. So they are grouped in part because of where they are professionally most consequential, although it's over a long period of time. They also have a very extended period of influence in China. So these are people that we follow for a fairly long period of time. And I'll just quickly go over. Wang Jise, we've mentioned, everyone in the room probably knows him. Mike Lampton is the one who wrote. So again, this is someone who worked with the subject about which he wrote. When you look at the book, one of the things you'll see, we have we gave people a template. There were sort of 3 things they had to do in the essay, and then they took it in different directions. So everyone was supposed to begin by thinking about the family. So the pictures, we have pictures of people as children. One of the lectures that I have that I do informally is I show the people, everybody as a child, to try to bring home to the American audience, these people had a childhood and what was the connection. So Wang Jise starts, he is the son of a very famous Beijing intellectual at Beida, but he's the youngest. So in the Cultural Revolution, he's sent off to Inner Mongolia. And that means when he enters Beida at age 30, he is a father, married and a father. And one of our last people we'll talk about was the youngest person in that class. So by chance in this book, we have 2 people from the class of Qibajie, Wang Jise and Wang Ding. That's for us was a really cool thing to see that we'd captured that without knowing that that's what we were going to do. And I'll just quickly go through. The next person is an issue of, we discussed quite a lot, Marjorie Margie Yang, as she's known, and this is by Bill Kirby. Margie Yang comes from a merchant family, had very 3rd generation silk weaving, where the grandfather went to the United States to learn to be an engineer, going to a textile manufacturing town outside of Boston, and then came back, and through marriage, the son-in-law becomes the head. Then comes 49, and the family goes to Hong Kong. So the Esquel company is based in Hong Kong, and to this day it's based in Hong Kong. And they have a very interesting thing with, at one point they did 80% of the high-end cotton shirts in the world, and they produced a totally green production facility in China. So they were riding that high. They also, because of the cotton, the best cotton comes from Xinjiang, they have very deep connections in Xinjiang. So in Bill's chapter, you'll see the arc of this kind of one generation back, Shanghai family. She herself then is born in Hong Kong, sent to the United States for boarding school, stays on, and then is brought back when her father dies, no sons, to become head of the company. I mean, piece by piece, that's what happens. She herself doesn't have any sons. Her daughter is now a successor. So they have great material. Bill can tell a great story. It's a case study for Harvard Business School. So they were far, along in telling this story. And we had this discussion, where does Hong Kong fit in this PRC-centered book? And we made the decision that we think Hong Kong should be part of this discussion. And the example of this family is an example of the way in which Chinese entrepreneurs over the centuries, but literally the 20th century, moved back and forth across that hub. And now we're back into that position again. So I think bringing the Hong Kong entrepreneur launches a discussion about some other subjects too, but not everybody agreed with that decision. The next is Zhang Ye, who some of you may know. She was Elizabeth Knupp, who just stepped down from being the head of Ford in Beijing, so worked with Zhang Ye as a partner. And so Zhang Ye also has a very interesting career. She also was Inner Mongolia, like Wang Jise. She also had a father who was a famous academic who was pilloried, and she was off in Inner Mongolia, and then makes her comeback and becomes graduates from university and made her career in the NGO world. So if you want to have the piece that she addresses that we wanted very much, was the way in which this not-for-profit arena emerges in this post 1980 era. It's something that was there before 1949, but it's really, as we know, crushed in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. And this is part of the rebirth of that Disanbumen. Some people will call it in Chinese. Some of the books are Disanbumen. And this is Zhang Ye's story. So Zhang Ye is not as famous. It's been very interesting as I've shown the book mainly to people from China. They will pick out the people they know. Almost nobody knows her, which was very interesting to me because she definitely is known in the US, in the NGO world. So it flags this question of the imbalance in our interactions, but for those of us in this field, it also shows us where the promise can be and the kind of talents that we hope.
And Elizabeth
nurture.
worked with her.
Yeah, I mean, everybody who worked,
She worked at Ford as well.
yes, she was at Ford, Asia Society, and RBS
Foundation.
Foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's now retired. So this is the most famous person. And of course, when we started out asking our friends who are famous Chinese people that Americans should know about, pretty much everybody said, oh, well, Long Ping. And it's true that Long Ping is not known among younger people. Women's volleyball didn't have the quite stature unless you were really into either volleyball or the Olympics. She's an amazing woman. And Susan Brownell, who writes about it, is also an amazing person. Susan is a professor of anthropology whose books you may have read. It's called Building the Body for China, which is the history of how athletics. She did a book with Jeff Wasserstrom on masculinity and femininities in China. She teaches in University of Missouri in St. Louis. But Susan is the generation of Americans who got to go to China in the late 80s, if I remember correctly, for language study and graduate work. And so Susan is also a color commentator in Chinese for the Olympics, all the last Olympics. And she herself she was a triathlete. No, she was a pole vaulter, I think, when she played for the Chinese University of Physical Education, which is where she studied Chinese. And most recently, she's certified to be a Olympic level skater at the senior level. So this is someone who's deeply engaged in athletics as an athlete as well as an anthropologist. And so we were extremely lucky because Long Ping is the only celebrity we have, and writing about celebrities is not easy. So we're quite happy to have that, needless to say. This is also a performer, Yang Mei-chi, also not known to people who aren't in the dance world. That's a picture of her next to Reinhardt. The older woman, the man in the middle is Reinhardt, and the older woman on one side, that's Yang Mei-chi. Emily Wilcox is an anthropologist also. She's at William and Mary now. Emily's Fulbright. Emily is a dancer. And when she was a Harvard undergraduate, that was really a big focus for her. And she has written several books about dance. And now she's again starting to dance professionally. So was a perfect person to write about Yang Mei-chi, who is an older generation. This is where the generation. So Yang Mei-chi is born in 1945. And she goes to Beijing as a child dancer at age 10, which would be the way they're recruited, and learned folk dance. And then she graduated in the year of the Cultural Revolution, which meant she was not doing much classical ballet, and she was doing more folk dance. And an extraordinary woman who some people think is the mother of modern dance in China. So this is a piece that Emily wrote as another dancer. And it also speaks to a theme which is very important in the chapter that Dick and I did, which is about the diaspora. So we flagged the Hong Kong piece. We think that's very important. But the other piece that's very important is the role of diaspora in these people's lives. And what Emily does in her chapter, she mentions many Chinese American dancers, and also one dancer with a Japanese father and a Chinese mother who turns out to be an amazingly important transition figure for bringing Yang Mei-chi into this world of dance, but also in sending American dancers, American-born dancers, to work in China. So this is a partnership which continues to this day, which is also super important to us. Give you
Yeah, so you can see from the second part in Debbie's descriptions, the gradual kind of broadening of possibilities for Chinese who are coming to the United States and going back. And this second group is motivated strongly by the desire to recover from the devastation of the Cultural Revolution. And they want to rebuild China in a way that's different from this first generation that is recovering from war and civil war, right? So it's an ongoing process, but the opportunities expand even more in part 3, where China becomes more prosperous and more globalized, and there are with more interdependence, across nations, as well as between the United States and China. There simply are more opportunities. And so the Chinese who come and go back to the PRC are still, they are patriots, they are nationalists, but they're also people who have greater opportunities. So that's clear in these chapters. Deng Xinguang, who is one of the older generation, is extremely unusual in this volume because he's the only one who grew up in the countryside. He grew up in Hunan province in a tiny little village. So he was not a victim of the Cultural Revolution because Mao wanted to send people from the cities down to the country. He was already in the country, right?
And his teachers were the sent down
His
youth.
teachers were the sent down youth, which is ironic because the villagers said, well, you're not strong enough to be working in the fields, so you can be a teacher. So Deng qualifies for Peking University in the class of 1978, Qibajie. And he applies to physics, but then he gets a letter saying, you've been admitted to study biology. Deng doesn't know what biology is, really. Yeah. But he goes to Beida, and he's just so bright and so able and so dedicated that he continues on for an MA. And then he decides really that the next step needs to be study abroad. So he's admitted to UC Berkeley, and it does extremely well there. Eventually lands a position at Yale as the Yale Molecular, Cellular, and Developmental Biology Department.
Right. We have it divided.
MCDB, right. And he has a lab. He's doing extremely well. And his parents come to visit the lab, and they tour the lab. And his father says, well, this is really impressive equipment, but what does this all mean? What are you doing for the farmers of China? What are you doing here? And this really comes home. And eventually, Deng starts not only collaborating with his contemporaries, with colleagues in China, but in 2014, he actually he resigns from his chaired professorship at Yale, and he takes up a new position at Beida. And not only that, but he starts up his own companies to engineer new strains of rice and wheat. He sets up a research institute in Shandong province. And so he is literally close to the back. He's gone, as you can see in this picture, he's back to the land. And he is doing something for the Chinese farmers. Hong Huang is another unusual character because she is sent by Zhou Enlai with 4 other children to New York City in 1973. And these kids, she is at the time, she's 12 years old. And the intention is for these kids to become the future interpreters and diplomats, the future Jiqiaojus. And she decides to take a radically different path. To say the least, she is certainly influenced deeply by American culture, American society. She goes to Vassar College as an undergraduate. She eventually becomes an American citizen, but retains her Chinese citizenship. she goes back to China and becomes an entrepreneur and a social media influencer, even before anybody really was using that term. And she has millions of followers in China. Some have called her the Oprah of China. And I think she's been extremely popular because she speaks her mind. And she's very refreshing in that regard. But she's also somebody who is able to interpret one side, that is Americans to Chinese and Chinese to Americans. She's also unconventional. She's had, in other ways, she's had 3 marriages, including one to the filmmaker Chen Kaige. Ma Tianjie is an environmentalist, born in 1982. And he was somebody who came of age as China was confronting an environmental disaster. The air, the land, water, all were extremely polluted. So when he got to Peking University, the environmental movement was starting to take hold. And he ended up going to work for Greenpeace, very active environmental NGO, and then came to study at American University and did a fellowship at Woodrow Wilson Center. And the American experience at the time convinced him that some of the US approaches to the environment were successful and could be useful to China, and went back, worked for an organization called China Dialogue, bilingual.
Isabel Hilton's.
Yeah, Isabel Hilton was the editor, and they did a series of reports and investigations on Chinese environment. But in recent years, of course, we've seen a reversal on the US progress on environment with the current administration in Washington. And we've seen a crackdown on the Chinese side on NGOs, on civil society. But at the same time, China has made the environment a priority. And I think there's 2 reasons for this. One is it was such a disaster that it became an extremely critical political issue for Chinese leaders. The other is that China is dependent for the overwhelming majority of its energy on imports, or has been. So it made all the sense in the world for them to invest in renewable sources of energy. U.S. seems to be going the other way, at least with this current administration. And finally, we have Gong Tianpeng, who is better known as Peng Peng Gong. And Peng Peng also came to the U.S. as a youth. He was about 10 years old when he applied to the Juilliard School of Music here in New York. When he applied, he spoke almost no English. And at his, what do you call it? Audition, thank you. When he auditioned, the committee said, they sensed that he couldn't speak English. So they said, Vito Lipinski, who ended up being his mentor, said, play Bach. And he played it flawlessly. And he continued on at Juilliard for the next 12 years. He was destined to be the next Lang Lang, or the next Wang Yujia. But he got to a point, he said, I really don't want to be a world-class pianist. He was already doing a lot of touring. He said, my heart of hearts, I want to be a composer. I want to compose music. So he was fortunate enough to get an invitation from the Shanghai Philharmonic Orchestra to come back to Shanghai and to be the resident composer at the age of about 22, I think, or 24, yeah, 22. So he has now composed, I think, 12 symphonies. He's heavily influenced by Western classical romance composers, especially Mahler. And if you listen to his music, which is widely available on YouTube, and I certainly recommend you, a lot of it sounds like he's got influences from here and there, but over time he's brought in more kind of Chinese influence from ideas from Chinese opera, for example. And so he says, I don't really think in terms of Western classical music or Chinese music. I think in terms of music, which belongs to everybody. I think in terms of human music.
Okay, well, thanks so much. So I should know this because I was the editor, right? So I'm interested in the process. I look at some of these names, people I've known in my career, Elizabeth Nutt, Mike Lampton, David Lampton, like William Kirby. These are pretty big names in the field, history, political science, philanthropy. How did you choose the chapter subjects? Did you, the two of you, decide who the chapters were going to be written about? And then ask people to write about
Yes,
them?
that's what we did.
You didn't collaborate with
No,
them?
no.
No, I don't want to write about this person, I want to write about that person.
No.
So you chose all these people. How'd you do it?
Well,
Because I mean, it's a big country, right?
There were a couple of instances where we went to an author because we thought we should have somebody in the field of business or somebody in the
Right,
field
so Bill
of
wanted to, yeah,
media or journalism. And they said, well, hey, how about this idea? How about this person? So there was some back and forth,
but not much.
but not that much, right?
We were, as I said, we went from our Chinese colleagues and friends, who are the people that Americans should know about. That's what we did. And the ones you just mentioned, we've worked with these people all our lives,
So,
right? These are our friends.
so these are your friends. So you knew these people and you wanted people to write about them, and you didn't ask third-party Chinese who Americans should know about. You asked them these.
No, we started, I mean, there were many ways, but we
Well-
started with Chinese friends and colleagues. We knew we wanted a range of occupations. And we were interested in what did people who had been in the United States, all these people, and some were in China, some were in Hong Kong, some were here. Who do they think Americans should pay more attention to?
Okay.
Because the news was not paying attention to these people.
Uh-huh.
Mhm. But I think based on our own experience, Debbie's in sociology
Yeah.
and mine in history, we knew that certain people, would be likely prospects. Wang Jisu, was, automatic. It was really at the top of the list. I had known Zhang Ye for maybe 30 years or more. I'd worked with her in
Because
China.
you, from your work at Luce.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I thought she would be a wonderful representative of how these two sides work together on the issue of civil society and NGOs. So it was a mix.
So I want you to say something philosophical. So, the relations are not very good right now, as you'd say, or just a polite way to put it, right? Relations aren't very good. These people were bridge builders early, most of them, not Gong Qianpeng so much, but someone like Xie Shizhe, right? Zi Zhengyun. What's the value of continuing with this kind of engagement, particularly in the non-political fields between the two countries for the long run, in your opinion? Because I have my own opinion, but I'm interested in your opinion. And I think it's something that people miss. That, life is long and political tensions can be short. So, but I'm interested in what you think. Like, what's the role now, and what can universities do? You know, what can Columbia do to keep these bridges open?
Yeah, well, I think sitting around the table, you have some of the answers. That I think there are many, many ways. And what we know, we look at Peng Peng now. When I was at Chengdu at a conference in June, he was premiering Symphony Number 12 the next day, but I had to go back to Hong Kong, so I missed him. But then we had the emails. He's coming to New York next month, and the world, as I have an adjacent relationship through the Yale School of Music, and where my husband has taught for 40 years, and we have hosted and have gone back and forth with Chinese musicians for 50 years. So I can tell you music is a definite place in which the engagement is deep, the engagement is strong, and the leadership can come as much from the Chinese side as it comes from the American. That's in my work, it's all about partnership. And then in the academic field, the human capital in China is so deep and so pervasive. So example, in Chengdu, because that's where, the Pritzker architect was, that's why I wanted to go. And I've worked on urban planning, and I work with architects. So 3 young architects come, and show us around, and we spend that, and this will lead to, and has led then to sharing and bringing the architects to Yale, and then having the Yale architects work in China. So that's that kind of field. So music and architecture is one where I'm involved in ongoing exchanges, and I don't see any problem. And I think it builds the kind of deep understanding and commitment among peers, and the peers are everywhere. And we could run through almost every single field here, but I want Terry to speak from his.
No, I think you put it extremely well, and I guess I would add that international relations are, when all is said and done, they are human relations, right? You can't implement policy without people, and it's those relationships that are absolutely critical. And if we abandon that because of political differences or political problems, then I think we're in deep, deep trouble. And the fact that Chinese students continue to come to the US despite the obstacles, despite different problems, many fewer American students are going to China, which is a problem. Which is, a serious issue. On the other hand, we still have Schwarzman College, we still have Hopkins Nanjing, we still have NYU Shanghai, we still have Duke Kunshan, these joint university programs, which are flagships. And so I dearly hope those will continue. Because
they're under fire, though, in their home institutions in the United States.
They are, although
I just saw the guys from Duke. He didn't feel like it was under fire. I just saw him last week.
I think on the Duke campus there have been criticism of having a partnership.
I'm sure there's criticism, but this person didn't feel that and Field, who's there, on the ground. This was Dick Broadhead, who was the last president.
Yeah.
So he and I.
Yeah, and Hopkins Nanjing is actually adding an English language stream, which will increase the numbers. So the university commitment there is okay. And Xi Jinping has said, we want to have more students coming to China. He doesn't want academics doing research in the archives, which is a whole another problem. He doesn't want visas for journalists, which are, that's another huge issue. Both sides have failed to come to any kind of resolution on restoring the Fulbright program.
Right, the Fulbright, and obviously Fulbright and Peace Corps have been gone a long time, and those of us who've benefited and support that are kind of devastated and feel our hands are tied. But this last, I have a couple of different offices, and the one office I have now is in the Paul Tsai Center at the Yale Law School. And the vitality of the exchanges that we've had and the talks we've had in the last 6 weeks. People are coming, people are going.
Mm-hmm.
We just placed Jeremy Down back in China permanently to run that program.
Mm-hmm.
We've had 4 Beida law professors who are with us now who are working on AI regulation, NGO, and then the area that the reason I'm there on family litigation, divorce, cohabitation, queer families is a big issue. So this is, I expected actually to have more pullback this semester. People are charging ahead, and
you mentioned you've got 10 university presidents coming from China.
So not presidents, but like deans and scholars. They're coming next week in person. We're talking about dean of School of Education, Peking University, the former university leader from Peking U, and from Beijing Normal, Tsinghua, Xiamen University added up, and also Chinese scholars from Canada, and also from United States. But we're talking about Hawaii, University of Hawaii. So we're gathering 10 universities representatives coming in person
To talk about.
Anything related to education, to this kind of people-to-people interaction. So we get this going. Yeah.
at
It's
the law
happening now.
school, the number one thing is AI regulation and digital governance, freedom of government information, and then this LGBTQ piece, which is deeply rooted. They just had a panel bringing people from Europe as well, from China. So now there's lots of ugly stuff going on, no doubt about it, stalking, flaming out and stuff. But I think, Terry, in my perspective, I think perhaps you're younger, but our perspective coming from, you think this is hard? You should have gone to China in 1980, in 1984. I mean, to me, the biggest thing, and I say, is the human capital is so great, is peers. I'm retired, but that's it. There are thousands of peers. And when I was doing fieldwork and research in the 1980s, there were great, smart people who were brave. They were not peers. And now that's what makes it different. And so the initiative, one of the things we said, the initiative is coming, from the Chinese side. The initiative it just feels so natural. And it's like China's like another part of the world, and it's not all smooth sailing, and especially not in our current environment from DC vis-a-vis universities. But being in one university in one little corner, one piece of research, that paper in Chengdu, and then these other training programs. And this morning, that's what I was doing, was talking about using the digitization of all the local newspapers at USC and CUHK, which is a project we've been involved with for 15 years and is finally done, using that as a base for the summer workshops, and explain to this person, who wasn't hard to convince, how to apply to do that money so they can do the workshop and move ahead with using this resource, which is now there for everybody to use. I'm not saying there aren't horror stories, of course.
So I just looked at my cell phone. It's all the time.
Yes, we
And
need to go.
I think it is a tribute to the quality of the work and the fascination you sparked that we could have just kept going on. But thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you for asking.
It was really
Thanks.
great, and I'm really proud to have it in this.
I was going to say, thanks for doing that.
Oh, no. Thank you. We do have high standards, but we want people in the crowd.
Thank you. Thank you.